everyone. I'm here with James and Yolanda Penn of Marriage by Design. How are you doing today, guys?
We're doing excellent. Thank you for having us.
Phenomenal.
Great. I've been very excited to talk to you all because I've seen some of your work. I've interacted with some of your stuff on Facebook, and I just couldn't wait to get you on the seat and get talking about everything that you're doing and what you envision for the Penn Agency, which we talked a little bit about. So first of all, let me give you a chance to kind of quickly what's the word?
Introduce
yourself. Thank you. Introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Okay. All right. Well, I am James Penn Jr. This is my wife, Yolanda. She's the better 90% of the Penn Agency. And the Penn Agency is our company. It's our global company. We're serial entrepreneurs, and we have really interest in marketing and sales, and that's where we've kind of started the Penn Agency. But kind of organically out of demand, we launched a marriage platform at the beginning of this year, Marriage by Design. And that came again out of organic demand because so many people said, you know what, it's challenging enough to be married. You all are married and in business together. How do you do it? So again, we launched Marriage by Design the first of this year.
Right. And we have enjoyed doing that. And we plan on bringing so much out for people that are engaged, single, married, desire to be married, and definitely focusing a lot of our energy on that.
Yolanda, when we were first talking before we started recording, you kind of explained what your thoughts were about this whole thing of building a business, building a family, and marriage. Can you say it again? Because I thought it was really important to outline that when you talk about building families, so that or building marriages, the purpose.
Right. I think what you're referring to is what we were speaking about earlier when we talked about my role. I'll start there as part of our marriage. First, I go from wife to mother to business owner. That is really consistent of what our marriage and our family unit looks like. Marriage is so important in the community, definitely in the Black community. And a lot of times we're seeing marriages be dissolved for different reasons that can definitely be avoided.
Irreconcilable differences.
Right. Irreconcilable differences. And we want to have impact there because we know if we can impact marriages, if we start at the base, if we start at the center of where everything begins, then you're going to have a happier household, which is going to impact children. And those children, of course, are going out into the community. Right. And so if we can start at the unit, start at the base or the center, which is the marriage, then we can definitely impact the society as a whole, which everyone needs some impact there, but definitely the Black community.
Right. That's so important, starting at the root rather than trying to solve the problem after it's created. We start at the root and then build from there. I really love that. And I thought it was important. So the Marriage by Design platform is something that you designed because you're going to start helping other couples with information, tools, and resources. And when we were talking, we talked a little bit about some of the things that you are going to offer. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So first off, every single Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on our Facebook page, Marriage by Design, we do a live web show. We do a live web show and we bring valuable content. One of the things that's different about our platform is we're very, very practical.
Right.
We're not based off some archaic theological, ideas. We're not, saying, hey, just go out there and put God first in your marriage and everything will be okay. Which there could be, truth to that, but what does that mean? What's the practicality? What are the practical steps? So we like to be very practical in giving people information. And so every Monday night at 9 p.m., we do our live web show. We bring guests on. We look forward to hopefully having you on the show at some point. Absolutely. And so that's one thing we do, and that's for free. People can just follow, and we have all the shows archived. They can get that. But we have a lot of exciting things that we're working working on as well.
Right. We definitely have some events that are coming up. We'll, touch on that a little bit later, but we also recently released a course, and this course is for people that are looking to be married specifically, but if you're already married, it will help you as well. And we have
few
books that are coming out this later in the year, the second half of the year.
Right. So one book and then some ebooks.
That's right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Very good. Very good. I want to talk about. I could talk about marriage. I think I said it before. I think sometimes I look in the comments and people are like, man, does she ever stop? And the answer is no, I don't. But I would like to talk about the business. And, we're going to talk about a few things, but I want to talk about, just kind of a few nuts and bolts things, because the honest truth is when you think about it, people have the idea of starting a business. They have the idea of running a business with their spouse, but a lot of people, it just stays an idea and they don't really know what the day in and day out is of that. And I want us to be able to give people a glimpse of that and then give them some valuable information for how they can apply that to their own life and build a business, build a family, build a legacy, build wealth, and so forth. Because these are all my things that I love talking about. But so Marriage by Design, let's just get is it marriagebydesign.com?
Yeah, The Marriage by Design, themarriagebydesign.com.
Marriagebydesign.com is where you can find them. And just for you guys to know too, a lot of these interviews that we do stream live on Facebook even after we've done this. So I'll keep stopping to just reiterate that this is Yolanda Penn and James Penn, if anybody's joining us for the first time, from Marriage by Design. And this is a set of interviews that I'm doing with entrepreneurs. I'm also going to put this up at the Black Business School to share with my students in the course that I do about starting your own business. And it's you can find that at it's actually called Fire Your Boss, and it's at idon'twantaboss.com, idon'twantaboss.com. So moving on.
I love that URL.
I do.
love that.
Sorry?
I said I love that domain.
I don't want to boss.com. Yeah. And
I'm allergic to bosses. I need to look that up. I'm allergic to bosses.com.
So give us a glimpse of how this all came about, and I'm talking about really, the nuts and bolts. Did you get a website? Did you, what did you do when you decided, okay, we're going to start a platform, we're going to build a business around helping people get tools, resources, and information about their marriages? And you already had a set of income streams and businesses, so you already kind of had a blueprint for how this works, right?
And let me start with that point right there, that this isn't our first rodeo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this isn't our first time as business. We're serial entrepreneurs. Everything that we do, from Marriage by Design to our marketing efforts and sales companies, we have it under the platform of the Penn Agency.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a journey even just to get to the Penn Agency.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for the ideal scenario of entrepreneurship, coming from a home where you have a husband and a wife who are entrepreneurs and children grow up in that, that really would set you off. But unfortunately, most of us don't have that background. That's not our background. My parents worked jobs, her parents worked jobs,
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't have an entrepreneur background, but we had the entrepreneur spirit, if you will.
Right.
And so we grew up doing everything they tell you to do: go to school, get the education, get the job. So from that mindset, most people aren't ready and prepared to be entrepreneurs.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I would definitely say one of the things I think a lot of people can take from our journey and story as we unfold and unpack and start sharing it, is that it is a process and it is a journey, and never despise humble beginnings. You don't have to step out there in the very beginning and quit your job. Don't quit your job if that's the background you have. You weren't raised in a household of entrepreneurs and you're ready for that. Don't go out there and quit your job. As a matter of fact, you can be getting paid to learn. So if you want to have a restaurant, it's probably good to work in a restaurant. Now, instead of going to school and trying to learn business and then go into debt and open up a business as a restaurant, why not get a job at a restaurant, learn and be there studying? Be there studying, not just going there to get a paycheck, but go there and study, and you're getting paid to learn somebody else's business.
Right.
So we really started off working jobs and doing business on the side.
Right. And it was always our desire to go full-time into business. And almost 5 years ago, we were both able to become full-time in business.
A little longer for me.
Yeah, a little longer for James.
9 years.
9 years for him. And I was still working in corporate America, and I was able to come home, and we were able to use our business income to support our entire family.
I've actually been home for 5 years as well. So congratulations to both of you.
Thank you.
I wanted to go back a little bit to what you said, James, which is very important. You know, it's funny. I teach the course that I mentioned is called Fire Your Boss. And paradoxically, one of the things that I teach in there is don't quit your job. At least not yet, because there's no glory in throwing your family into a crisis.
Right.
And calling it, you know, yay, I'm an entrepreneur, and you're up to your eyeballs in bills and debts. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, you know, a thoughtful process, a strategic process. And I think that's what you're also saying. And one of the things that I also share is let your job finance your business. The truth is, you know, we have all these fantasies that you're going to just start a business. But the truth is, when you want to put up a website, that's money. You want somebody to help you build it, that's money. Everything has, and it may be little trickles, you know, and maybe you're resourceful enough to find the funds from somewhere else. But honestly, the easiest way could be just have a job and start building while you have a job.
Right.
Absolutely. You want to quit your job, but you don't want your job to quit you.
Right.
And people saying they're full-time entrepreneurs, and you look at that situation like, no, you ain't full-time. You just ain't got no job. You unemployed.
Yes, let's make a distinction between being self-employed or being an entrepreneur and just being unemployed.
Right. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. I want to dig a little bit deeper. You kind of mentioned, you know, that process of transitioning. And I wholeheartedly agree when you said that your parents work full-time. Mine did too. And I really did have that 40-40 plan. You know, what is it? Work 40 hours a week for about 3 years and retire on 40% of the income that you couldn't live off of.
Right.
100%. And try to do that. So everybody knows that 40-40 plan. And I did go through a transition phase, and it's important that you brought that out, because even if you have the heart and passion by themselves won't do it if you haven't, you know, kind of built yourself up in terms of confidence, you haven't educated yourself, and you've transitioned from a person who has a worker mentality to a person who has an entrepreneur mentality. So let's talk about that for a little bit. How did you kind of go through the steps to kind of make that transition in terms of your mindset, in terms of the people you're around, in terms of how you looked at jobs, and getting to that point where you finally said, okay, we're going to put the jobs away and we're going to do this full time?
But, you know, I'm going to start with where you left off about the heart and the passion. And I agree wholeheartedly that heart and passion in and of itself is not enough. Because you're going to have to develop those other things. You're going to have to develop the skills, the practical skills to be able to move your business ahead. But I think starting with the heart and the passion is enough to get you going in the right direction. And what I mean by that is, if you don't have the heart and the passion, you won't do what it takes to develop the skills.
Right.
And so we really focus on a lot of the mindset part of it, and we can give some practical steps as well. But the mindset part of it, you have to have a very strong desire and a reason why you want to be an entrepreneur, and to have that desire be, well, because I want money, or because I want a nice car, because I want a nice home. I don't think you'll go through what it takes to build a successful business for a nice car or for a nice home. I think you'll build a business for that. But once you get punched in the mouth, and you will get punched in the mouth, you have to have something bigger. So starting there with that heart, that passion, that desire. For us, before we even had children, I always wanted my wife to be home. I wanted my wife to be home. And even, you know, regardless of children, I wanted my wife to be home. I had the mindset, I had the mindset if it was going to be some man that was going to boss my wife around and tell her what to do, doggone it, it was going to be me. It wasn't gonna be some other man, right? So, so you know, and I just don't understand that a man would like he's okay with his wife going to work and having another man tell her what to do. I don't understand that at all. So
right, because it's not always that cut and dry. We don't actually make it that clear. And when you do, actually, I found that people get mad at me. When I say you realize what you're doing, you're abusing you're letting other men and people abuse your wife, and people get mad about that.
Right. And my wife actually had experience where she was getting harassed at work.
I did. That was several years ago. And I had a very strong desire to come out of work after that because I was harassed on the job. And fortunately, you too. So fortunately, I was able to get out of that situation and able to be at home and be a stay-at-home mom and wife and entrepreneur.
And even like this past week, we have had some challenges with our children.
Right.
They've had some illnesses, and of course, one we tried to keep them separate, but the next one got it, and then the next one got it. We have 3 children, and this week was challenging. And as challenging as it was, we had to remind ourselves, you know, how thankful we were that we're full-time entrepreneurs at home.
Right.
I didn't have to ask another man if I can be with my children.
Yes.
Have my wife ask another man
of your own kids.
Exactly.
Like I you know, and so get back to the point of it all is that is a strong desire, and that, you know, is going to get the heart, because you're going to have the bumps and the bruises, you know, on the journey to success. Success is a journey. It's not a destination. It is the process, is the progressive realization of a worthwhile dream or goal. And so you will continue to make the progress. You'll continue to step forward and step forward. If you have a true burning desire and a true why, you're going to figure those things out. You're going to do what it takes to search the YouTube. We're in the information age. You're going to search Google and the YouTube videos. Everything you want to do is out there, and the information is out there. So be encouraged, even if you're having challenges right now. If you have a strong why, just be encouraged that where you are is not who you are.
Right.
Where you are, your circumstances, situation, it's just an appointment you made in the past to meet your current self. And if you keep working and you keep pressing forward, you will have those breakthroughs, and little breakthroughs, and you'll look up over the course of 2, 5, 10 years, and it's accumulated to the knowledge and the information to be able to, you know, press forward.
Absolutely. I'm glad you started with the why and the, you know, that strong burning desire. I think that's Think and Grow Rich. But at least that's where I read it. But
right here, right on the shelf. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm glad you pointed out that your wife had those challenges at her job. And, you know, when I talk to Black people, most of the time, there comes a day where they feel like they're going to choke somebody at work because of the way they're treated. Or they want to burn the building down, something like that. But obviously we don't do any of those things. But I can share my own experience. I won't share the whole experience, but I had such a tough time at my job where I had worked so hard. And by the time I think I was 29, I was a college professor, and I was so proud of myself. And I thought I finally reached this goal that I've dreamed about, whatever. And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful experience in that I loved the students and I loved teaching, and I believed that was my calling. But this other side, where you're getting, you know, racism and all this abuse, that was a nightmare. That was a nightmare. And the truth is, the money was great. It was only going to get better. My skills were developing. I loved what I was doing, and so on and so on. But a few things were creeping up. Number one, the emotional toll it was taking on me, that other stuff I'm talking about, was not good. And it made me a horrible mother, and it made me a horrible wife. Because if you stress somebody out enough, and at that level every single day, most people won't admit it. It makes them nasty to deal with. I don't mind sharing, okay, because it's over. It's in the past. Right. That's the first thing. Then the second thing is, aside from just being not that pleasant to deal with, I had to put my kids somewhere every day. It was with babysitters, it was with schools, it was anything but me, because I had to be somewhere, you see, working for somebody else. And then the other thing is, honestly, I'm of the opinion that if your marriage can't work, you know, assuming you have a healthy husband, a healthy wife, you failed in life. It doesn't really matter what else you've succeeded in, you failed. So for me, I needed to believe that I could give it everything, and I just couldn't with all this harassment and stress and all this other stuff going. So if you come to 5 years down the line where I quit that, even if I ever feel like my cash flow is low or there's a financial crunch or whatever, and I say to my husband, maybe I should go get a job, okay? We have to then think, oh, okay, so are you gonna put your kids in school to be abused by the teachers like we were experiencing? Are you gonna put yourself in a position for other people to tell you, you can't go where you need to go. Your kid is sick, but sorry, we need you today. You know, it sounds so crazy at this point.
Right.
You know, so it's like, okay, I guess, you know, we'll just ride out this crunch and figure it out or whatever it is. And that becomes such a strong why when you've been on the other side of it and you're aware of all these other things, like James said. I'm sure that's what you have to ask him if there's a financial crunch and you think, okay, he has to ask himself, okay, am I willing, because I'm feeling a little bit of a cash flow crunch or whatever, to go have another man tell my wife what to do and abuse her and so on. So just so that I will have a little bit more money. And it's just almost emphatically no. So I think it's important for that you guys brought up the idea of talking about your why and clear about it.
And let me say, I appreciate the transparency that you talk about, that we do go through the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs. You have those moments where you have the financial crunches, because so many people who are aspiring entrepreneurs, it may get disillusioned if we're not responsible in saying, you know what, you see us being able to say, oh, we're home when our children are sick, and you know, people see us travel and speak. We've been in multiple countries this year, you know, speaking with our business and different things, but then they're disillusioned to think that there aren't challenges that come along with it. Right now, we're on pace this year with our business to have the biggest year ever financially in our business. But last year, 2016, was the lowest year ever financially. And there are times where those thoughts creep in, you know, about, you know, well, do I need to go get a job? And it always comes down to, I know that's not the solution. I know I'm not going to make a long-term decision based off of a short-term situation. And you have to resist the urge. You have to be emotionally mature, you know, emotionally responsible to resist the urge to do a temporary quick fix. And there was times, you know, even for us just last summer, you know, it's so amazing how your situation can transform in a short amount of time. Just last summer, where it was literally a time where I was out hunting, and whatever I hunted at that moment, that's what we ate. But we you know, we didn't get kicked out of nowhere. They didn't come take nothing from us. You know, we made it through. And now, you know, because we pressed through that, we're having some
you're having a great year. And if you hadn't pressed through 2016, you wouldn't have realized what you're realizing in 2017. Yeah, that's so important. I always say that you know, when you get used to that paycheck that comes every week or every 2 weeks, and it's steady because it's the same amount more or less, except for those of us who've been in sales with bonuses and all this other stuff. That's even more, you know. But it's like crack. Because you get addicted to that thing, you know it's coming and it's gonna, you know, be predictable in this thing, and you have to.
And it's like crack because you're addicted to it, but it ain't good for you.
It's not. Then that's my point. Yeah, it's like crack. It feels good, and it's, you know exactly what it's gonna do and everything, but it's not. In the long range, it's not really gonna solve your problems. At least not the problem of, you know, building your family, building a legacy, building wealth. It's not gonna solve that problem. So thank you for also bringing that up. I'd like for you to keep going, James. I know you were kind of sharing a few things. You talked about a very strong why, and then you kind of inoculated us or everybody that, you know, yeah, there are going to be ebbs and flows. There are going to be times where financial crunches do come in, and it's important. I also talk about that in my course. Same thing. I say, look, just understand it's not a job. So it's not going to pay you like a job. There'll be days where you can't. I've had days where I couldn't believe the amount of money that I saw in my account, and there were days where I couldn't believe there's no money in my account. And that's just how it goes, you know.
We've had the days where we couldn't believe how much money was in our account on both ends of the spectrum. Like, that's what the account is, right? So one thing I'll say anecdotally to that is, anytime somebody asks you how business is going, you can always just say unbelievable. No matter how bad or how good it is, man, you wouldn't believe it if I told you. It's unbelievable.
Right.
No, but back to that point, so after you have that strong why, it's so important because you are going to have to develop those skills. And so, I want my wife, I want you to touch on that process of continuing education, because we did have to grow and learn, and it started with having that passion and desire, because that's what's going to get us through. But then you're going to have to actually start to develop.
Right. I believe that journey started for me when we first decided, we're going to seriously start pursuing business together. Over 10, 11 years ago, we decided that, hey, we're going to step out there, do something together. We were both working in corporate America, both had jobs, and we said, we want to do something together because we enjoy spending that time together. We got married because we love each other. We got married because we want to spend time together. He was going an hour away here, I was going an hour away there, and we were only spending 4 hours together. Then we had to do it again. We were living for the weekend. And so when we decided, hey, we're going to, do something part-time, that was also accompanied with personal development. And just like so many people that think that, hey, I got it all together, I was someone that thought it had it all together. I had the master's degree. I was doing what I wanted to do.
Oh, I got bragging. She always just say the master's degree. That she graduated cum laude, made straight A's in grad school, okay? And we're one now, so I just tell you together collectively we had a 3.0 average our GPAs together, because we're one, so I don't have to mind.
But James did really well in his field. He just didn't want to take the histories and the science and all that kind of stuff. But when you got into your field, you had straight A's.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, so I quickly learned that, we're stepping out here part-time. We were very disillusioned in not thinking that, we had this growth that we had to do. I remember sitting in a meeting and thinking, if they're up there doing that, my master's degree, I got it all together. We're both educated. We're going to be millionaires in 6 months. And then we sat back and actually started looking like, I don't have it all together. And my people skills are extremely lacking. This is what I need to work on. I'm not up to par in being the support system I need to be, being the wife I need to be in this partnership. And so we began that journey of self-development. I was already used to, reading the textbooks and different things like that. James didn't read textbooks. He didn't do any of that stuff, so much to the point that a mentor of ours said, hey, I want you to read this book. And James was like, you can keep your book because I don't read. And
she was
I was very embarrassed.
It's not that I was illiterate, that I said it like I couldn't read or something. Right. But I was like, I don't read.
Yeah. And I believe that book was
The Magic of Thinking Big. The
Magic of Thinking Big. And so we began, after he read that book, it was like, wow, this is information I can use. This is not information about, Christopher Columbus in history class.
Or geology rocks. Like,
why
am I reading
geology
about rocks?
Right.
I had never read anything that mattered. And so, to the point of, entrepreneurs and some of the things that are going to help. In that book, Magic of Thinking Big, chapters 2, 12, and 13, it talks about the failure diseases, detailitis, excusitis, and procrastination, right? The failure diseases. And I started reading things that mattered, and it really helped us.
Right.
I realized that actually you do read.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, wow, this is
exactly. Not just Cliff Notes. So
right. I skimmed Cliff Notes in college. I didn't even read Cliff Notes. I skimmed the Cliff Notes.
It's amazing. That speaks to how intelligent he is, because he didn't. I'm serious. We dated all through college. He wasn't picking up books and he wasn't reading, but he was doing well enough to where he could still get by.
They didn't kick you out.
Right. They didn't kick you out, and you graduated. So that speaks to the mind that he has. Right. And so as we kept developing and taking this journey, we were able to identify our weaknesses. I think the biggest part that I took away from it, and still developing now, still on this journey of personal development, because you never arrive. There's always new heights to reach. But early on, I had to learn how to become a wife. Being from a background where I have the master's degree and I'm a little bit older than James. And so, and so I always was like, hey, I am the one that, feels like I have to have this control. I'm the aggressor. I was in the sales field so much to where I had to turn it off when I came home because I was trying to boss my husband. And
run things.
Exactly. That's not the way it's run. You have one head, and James is the head of our household. And so I had to step back and start learning how to be feminine, learning how to take on those roles and let James lead.
Right.
And that was over 11 years ago that I started that journey. I had to work on me. I had to quickly learn that it wasn't about how I was going to change James or what he needed to work on. It was about me identifying my flaws and moving forward from there. And so over time, it's just been a progression as it gets better and better and better as we move on. Again, we haven't arrived, but that is really how we make marriage and business work.
Absolutely. I'm glad because I was going to go there and ask, how does it kind of work together? A couple of years ago, I wrote an article for Ebony magazine, and it was basically about exactly what you just described, where a couple is running a business together. So, how does the business end work, and how does the marriage play into it? And I mean, I could tell you, I've known so many couples who are brilliant. And they would start a business, and the business would take off, and then they would turn on each other, fight each other, and everything would fall apart. So it's important on both ends. If you got to make the relationship between the two people work and the business work. And I've also known couples who were great couples but couldn't run a business to save their lives. So getting those two things working is a phenomenal thing, and it actually, in my opinion, takes brilliance. Because the truth is, a lot of things are in play. But I wanted to go back to when you were talking about, he would go an hour away, you go an hour away, and then you try to squeeze in 4 hours. 4 hours actually sounds like a lot, because by the time you decompress, cook dinner, all
right.
that stuff, you're really not spending any time together. You're in the same space, but you're not really connected.
Right.
But I wanted to touch back on that and just kind of talk about how unnatural it is. The way that we're encouraged to function. I talk more to women and about a woman's experience, but I always say that the modern woman is encouraged to operate in a way that is absolutely traumatic and unnatural. Just not. I don't think it's natural to feel the urge every day to get as far away from your kids as possible, to get as far away from your spouse as possible, and to disregard them for most of the day and think about them at the end of the day when you've exhausted all your energy. Yes. God knows what, whether, I don't know what people do, corporations or whatever it is they're doing. But when you think about it and you put it in that context, it's just not natural. And why even bother get married? Why even bother have kids if every single day your focus is going to be what am I going to do to get away from these people?
Right.
Babysitter is, I've used babysitters and I will again, but that's not my strategy every single doggone day. You understand? There's a difference between needing to do something and say, hey, can you watch my kids for a couple of hours? I'm going to do this. But primarily it's me who's the mom, primarily it's me that's the wife. Okay. So I just wanted to go back to that and just talk about that the way that we're encouraged to function. If you follow mainstream trends and media, they're telling you almost exactly the opposite of the way that you're supposed to be and function.
And I think we fall into the mistake and people feeling like everything that's common is natural. Yeah. Everything that's common is normal. Just because something is common doesn't mean it's normal. Just because it's typical doesn't mean it's natural. And so I know we're talking about business and of course we're marriage educators. So we're kind of, swinging in and out of marriage and business, but they really go hand in hand. So if we go back and we look at, prior to the turn of the 20th century, when before it was an industrial revolution, okay, before we had assembly lines, which, by the way, Henry Ford did not invent the automobile. It was a black man, the automobile. Henry Ford started mass producing them with the assembly line. Okay. So when we look at the assembly line, all of a sudden you have factories, you have plants, you have this huge need now for people who are just smart enough to come somewhere for 8 hours a day, do a task, okay? We need them smart enough to be able to do a task, not too smart to ask questions, okay? And so we see this advent of the school system as we know it now starts to develop, okay? And prior to the turn of the 20th century, most people, if they had a job, it was more in a apprenticeship type of fashion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you had a skill, you were maybe a blacksmith. I wanted to be a blacksmith, so I would study under you for a while in apprenticeship type of fashion. But my goal was always to go back and have that family business. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the family, and we can't even really separate it if we're doing it the right way. We don't want to separate it. So as you see the Industrial Revolution, take off, and you see the school system, take off. Well, school is preparing you to have a job and just being smart enough to go do a task for a certain amount of time. But that's what's common now. That's what's typical, but that's not natural. That's not how we were, designed to operate. We don't think it's anything more beautiful than a husband and a wife working together for a common purpose. Is one word you mentioned earlier was legacy.
Mm-hmm.
Creating a legacy, something that we can leave and work toward with our family, with us together as at the head of that.
Right.
Definitely.
And even when you go back, guys, and you look at the, say we go back to the time where, dad went off to a manufacturing job or whatever, and mom stayed home with the kids.
Right.
He was usually about 5 minutes away. And he could come home for lunch. He could come home for a coffee break.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody in the community knew his kids and his wife and so forth. It was still a very different experience, and we had more access to each other. Didn't have to go far away and then travel fighting traffic. There wasn't all these other barriers which created even more distance. So it's like
we talk about the issues and the challenges that come, particularly with the wife working outside of the home.
Right. I love the way you have put that in the past. If the wife can get home, and a lot of times even it only takes a couple $100, maybe $500 for out of the household income, and that can bring the wife home because you're paying for babysitting, you're paying for all of these different things that we have counseled with so many different and mentor so many different couples, and they're like, all we need is an additional $500 and my wife can come home and she can be happier, she can be with our kids and all of these different things. And I think even beyond that, when you're getting the opposition from women, they're out there that are in the workplace and different things like that. Every mom that I've known that has had to go back to work after that maternity leave, they all cry and are emotional. I've not known a mother to have to go back to work after maternity leave and wasn't like, oh, I hate to do this. I don't want to put my child in daycare. But because of society and what society has taught, it has said, Mom, you get 6 weeks, you get 12 weeks, you go back to work, put your child in daycare and suffer through.
And we have a guest that's going to be on our show in a few weeks. Her name is Tamara, and she just wrote a piece on Huffington Post about this very incident right here. And what we're telling our children, women are they're more focused on being a boss chick than being a mom chick or a wife chick. And that's telling your children where they rank in terms of the value. Right. So
I just wrote the word devalue. Mind you, when I looked down, I was writing devalue.
Devalue, exactly. So, again, it's a over emphasis on materialism,
right?
Because we're really, we could have anything that we want. My wife, we want to upgrade her car right now. We could get her a new car right now. Both of us could go take on some jobs in addition to our businesses, put our children in daycare, and then we could finance the job, finance the car, but we're going to do it at the expense. So it's all about a value. I know a lot of people who are listening might say, well, extra $500, I can't come home for an extra $500. Well, again, like my wife said, do the math. You take out daycare, the amount of gas you're spending on a daily
clothes, makeup, hair, shoes,
clothes,
there you go.
Right, when you start factoring all of that in, then you can come home for just a few extra $100, but we value the things that we can get, more so than the family.
You become a slave to those things.
Right.
When I was working at one time, I remember my kids were very small and both of them were in daycare. I had a really good paying job, but when I calculated after everything was all said and done, my mind at this time, I think I was paying $500 a week in daycare. And I can't remember what else, but after everything came out, the taxes, benefits, daycare, all the other stuff that goes with it, I had $100 left.
Wow.
And I was getting, and the thing is, I see how ridiculous these things are. And I was getting up every day at 5 a.m., religiously dropping my kids off, then driving to the place, and then, whatever all day, and then, rushing back because the babysitter also has a timeline where if you're not here by this time, I'm charging you on the hour.
Exactly,
or
yes.
it is. So rushing back there, then rushing back home, and then trying to get dinner on the table. And the house is a mess because we've all been gone, and the kids are little and trying to clean, and then flopping down exhausted, and then doing it again and again, and it was torture. And let me add something that you'll appreciate, maybe, Yolanda. When my son was very little, I was committed to breastfeeding him, so I spent the day at work pumping milk.
Done. I did that for 2 years. I did that, and
madness.
Yes, and my coworkers got angry with me and upset, and I didn't care. I was like, well, I'm sorry you don't get the additional break, but I'm going to go do this. But it does, it creates a challenge, and that even speaks to what you were talking about. We had such a strong desire to do that, and we had such a strong desire to have our children at home that even during that time that I was still out in corporate America, I commend James because we still didn't put our daughter in daycare. He had her on his lap and they're doing work together.
Wow.
And so, again, that wasn't ideal. I wanted to be home, but that just speaks to sometimes you're not going to be in that ideal situation.
Absolutely. My husband too, yeah.
But you decide, okay, what am I willing to give up? And it wasn't something that we were willing to give up. We didn't want to willing to give up putting our daughter in daycare every single day. And so we made a decision and made it work. It wasn't ideal. We looked for opportunities where James could go back to work, but it wasn't going to work out. My income was more money, and that was definitely something
that master's degree got her more.
In the marketplace.
But it worked out. It worked out for us.
How many times to say masters?
Right. But it worked out, even though it wasn't ideal. It actually was that blessing in disguise, as a lot of people like to call it, because she had more income earning opportunity and potential in the job field, but in terms of business, I had more potential to establish the foundation. So for her to be able to make that extra money in corporate America while I established our business at home until she could go and fire her boss. That's what worked out for her.
Right.
Absolutely. And I think that, I think sometimes it sounds like we shame people for working or we're looking at them a certain way. And I'm glad you said the word fire your boss. That's the name of the course. But the reason why I say it is that that's what you should be working for, not just working to work. Just working and working and working and waiting to, retire or die, whichever comes first. But you should actually have that mindset of, okay, I'm working right now if I have to, so that I can fire my boss. Now, you don't tell your boss that, but
I say it's nothing wrong with having a job. There's something wrong with just having a job.
Right. Thank you. Yes. Thank you for making that clarification. Because I think that sometimes people feel like there's a stigma that we're trying to attach to having a job, and that's not really it. It's strategic about it. And
I would say this, I'm a proponent for people doing what they want to do as long as they're not interfering with, the rights of anybody else. Like you have a right to be wrong. Okay. As long as you ain't mess with nobody else. And if you work in a job, if you're the type of person that work in a job for the rest of your life, is okay with you and you're happy with, the work-life balance you have or lack thereof. If you're happy with that, cool. I'm your biggest cheerleader, biggest fan. Work your job for. I can't do it. I'm unemployable, right? Not unemployed, unemployable. I'm allergic to bosses. But if you're okay with that, here's my thing. I just don't want to hear you complain, right? And I was about to say another word, but I don't know if I can say it on your platform. Right?
Yeah, you can say it. I don't want to hear you bitching.
Don't be bitching and moaning about it, right? Like, if you're gonna bitch and moan about it, do something about it. So that's who we're talking to. If you fine with your job, then it's cool. But the truth is, most people aren't fine with their job.
They're not.
And they'll start to lie to themselves and say it ain't so bad. That it ain't so bad. Well, my question is, what amount of bad is okay? You're saying it ain't so bad. You talk about women that are dreading to go back after they have their child. I remember a young lady at the first job I had out of college, when she came back off maternity leave, she was hearing her son, her newborn son, being at the pediatrician getting his first round of shots, and she was literally under the desk crying because she was hearing him on the phone. That's typical. That's common, but it's not normal.
Right.
Unnatural.
It's unnatural.
Right.
Yeah. And so
I'm sorry.
So some of those other challenges that come, from particularly the wife working from home, you all both have touched on it. You go out and you give the best of yourself to someone else. You you get dressed, you put your makeup on, you're looking fly, and you go and be around somebody else all day long. And then you come home and you take your makeup off, tie your hair up, and put on sweats, and that's what you're giving to your husband, and that's what you're giving to your spouse. And now both of you all are tired at home, and you're seeing
a hot mess.
You're saying the worst of each other, okay? You're snappy. She's, fussing at you because you put you left your socks and underwear on the floor. You fussing at her because she ain't cooked. She like, me cook? Who gonna cook?
I was working too.
I've been at work too. And so now you go back to, to your workplaces, and she's seeing her supervisor, her boss, maybe at his best, where he's dressed up and he's in a position of power, and he's smelling good and looking good, and he's so smart and sharp. And the man is at work at a job where his assistant, that floozy bimbo, whatever the case is telling him, "You're so smart, and how smart you are, and you have all the good ideas." And at home, your wife, that ain't never gonna work. Why don't you just focus on yourself? And this is where we start to see the breakdown in the family. So this separation, again, this is back to the point I was looking to establish earlier, is when it comes to business and when it comes to marriage and family, they really go hand in hand to have it in an ideal situation, because you eliminate that.
Right.
My wife has been around another man saying I'm at his best. I'm being around a woman all day long who is flirting with me and telling me how great my ideas are, while my wife isn't, giving me that same thing at home. And also understanding and looking at how, as a woman, she's looking at me, to fulfill my role as a provider. But if she is providing as well, then we start breaking down the roles that we have. That's one of the big things we talk about in Marriage by Design, is the roles. If we're both working, and I come home and say, "Hey, what's for dinner?" she has a right to look at me and be like, "Yeah, what's for dinner? You could." But if we have clear roles on who is doing what, and who is providing, who is the support, who is the protector, who is the nurturer, then everything is in sync. And you need roles in your marriage, and you need roles in your business as well.
Right.
Again, back to the word natural.
Right.
Natural. That's what's natural. And we are working against nature a lot of times, or encouraged to work against nature. I wrote down the word devalue earlier when you were talking, and the reason why is I want to come back to it. And whether you see it that way or not, what you're really doing is devaluing your kids. And the way that things are set up right now is we devalue womanhood. And why I'm saying that is because we women, and I was very guilty of this when I was younger, we take on very masculine traits because those are held up as success, or being good or being smart and all this other stuff. And we devalue womanhood, and the things that are natural for a woman to be are looked at as less than,
Yes.
And even just the very fact of you two getting in your cars, and I don't mean you two, but generally the two people getting in cars and going to work and all this other stuff, that's actually just saying that what a woman does at home has no value, because we got to go do the other thing. We got to go get this money, because never mind the kids, never mind the house, never mind everything else. We got to go do this, because then that means that whatever else is not done, it's not really important. There's no value to it. So it's just really important to understand that. And I had to make this shift, because again, when I finished undergrad, I went right to graduate school. Then I was, chasing that corporate ladder that everybody talks about. And I was very ambitious. I was very driven. A lot of people used to remark about how driven I am and how successful I'm going to be and all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to do
it.
That was Yolanda.
Yeah. And it became a part of my identity
Mm-hmm.
to the point where thinking about sitting at home made me feel like, what? After all these years of investing all this time and my father's money to pay for these degrees, and oh no, that would be whatever. But I think what was happening was, and I don't even know, because my parents are very traditional. I don't even know how I fell into that trap. American life, really, I think. Fell into that trap of thinking that being a woman wasn't enough, and I had to take on these masculine traits and just be something else other than what I naturally was. And it's been such a struggle in the beginning to make that conversion, but when you see the results on your marriage, when you see the results as far as your kids, your home, and then when you start to understand that you're planting seeds that are going to echo into eternity, if you really, really understand that, I mean, you wouldn't have it any other way, because you understand what you're doing here. Even if you don't see it right now, like you guys talked about 2016 being a bit of a rough year financially, you couldn't do that without seeing the vision of what you're trying to do, not just this year, 10 years from now, 100 years from now. And that's what we need, I think, in our community. I'm unapologetically only talking to Black people. We need to restore our families. We need wealth. We need so many things. So you can't keep talking about what everybody else is doing. Let's talk about us and talk about the crisis that some of us are in and what it's going to take to restore. And I love what you said, Yolanda, when you said that you have to start with the family structure and go and build from there. And the truth is, when a man, and the James kind of alluded to this, when a man feels like he has a wretched woman at home waiting for him, who's going to criticize every idea and all this other stuff, do you know he actually is not going to perform that well? Even if he's brilliant, even if he has a great idea for a business, if he thinks attack is the only thing that can happen, he's not going to reach his full potential in terms of that business is not going to reach its full potential and so on. So I think it's very important. That's why I'm so excited to talk to you guys. It's so important to highlight that this is a holistic thing. It's like these things, they all work together, and we're desperate for it in the Black community.
And when you talk about the Black community, I don't want people to miss it. Really, we're re-emphasizing that the economics and the family part go hand in hand, because they talk about it's cheaper to keep it, right? Why are these sayings? Because when we start complaining in the Black community about well, women shouldn't be putting the man on child support, and why are you taking half the business and economic? Well, those wouldn't be issues if you had the marriage together. So when you talk about something that can affect business, if you don't think a divorce can affect business, or having a child out of wedlock, you never got married in the first place, you don't think that can affect business, you are sadly mistaken. And again, when that unit comes together, a husband and a wife come together and work business. And one of the things you touched on is, in devaluing the role of women, okay, and femininity, that's a part, even in the family and in business, because she is my business partner, okay, that's a part as well. Huge devalue on femininity.
It is. And I believe where that devalue starts for me, and this was not conscious, something that I saw or something that somebody taught me growing up, but you see it around you. When you're, seeing abuse and you're seeing all of these different things, then you're like, oh, okay, I have to go get my own. Growing up in my household, I saw, abuse from my father to my mother. My mother has, since remarried and got out of that situation. But when I saw those different things subconsciously implanted in me that I can't go through this, I won't go through this, I looked at men differently, and I said, I have to go get my own. I remember being told, your education is so important. Don't depend on a man for anything.
Right.
And that was so ingrained in me to where, of course, I thought, oh, I'll get married. Maybe I'll have kids, but I won't have to depend on him for anything. And women are growing up definitely Black women in Black communities, they're growing up hearing that, seeing that, and saying, you know what, I'm gonna go out here and make sure my own is covered, because I can't trust in men. Specifically, I can't trust in the Black man that he is going to take care of me, lead me, and guide me along the path. And so I grew up in all of that. So I had to get rid of all that junk before we even got married, all of that mess in my mind. And I was like, wow, this is somebody that I can link arms with, because I knew his character. I knew where he was going. We didn't all have it together, of course, but I could see that inside of him. And I knew that that was what I would desire and what I was after. And so I was able to become that support system. Support is a horrible word to women, especially an educated woman. If you're saying, I need you to support your husband, it's like, well, he needs to support me. And women lose the fact, and they forget that support is so strong. I like to give the analogy of you driving over a bridge. When you drive over that bridge, you see the structure, you see all the arches and all that kind of stuff. But without the support of the pillars underneath, without that cement, without all that other kind of stuff, it would completely fall apart. And women have looked at this support role as something that is diminishing, something that is horrible, something that is not needed. They look at it like that and supporting your spouse, it like it's weak in supporting your spouse, as well as taking on the role of being a stay-at-home mom. I'm more busy today as a stay-at-home mom and as a partner if I ever was at work. At work, I got breaks. I can go talk to my cube mate. We can have conversation, all of that kind of stuff. And then I go back to work. There's no breaks at home. Right. There's no lunch break. There's none of that. I am busily doing that. And I love the way James has talked about it. He said, there's no way we could afford to not have you working at home, not have you be a mom, not have you be a wife. Not only am I happier, which makes our relationship better, but if
you got a different man, you got a different woman when you bring her home from work. I'm just saying. more kids start popping up.
They do. So
what you talking about?
Side note, we have a baby.
That's what I'm saying. What you talking about?
Yeah. We called her El Dorado because we were out living our lives, didn't have to take a vacation or anything like that. We were just living our lives, and we conceived her there. So
if you don't want her,
named El Dorado.
If you don't want your wife talking about she tired and now I'm tired, it don't work when she ain't got no job. Tired? Well, you got nowhere to go anymore. You got nowhere to go. So, but
yeah.
To put a pin in this point though, I want to speak to the men, because you're talking about the women, and I'm gonna challenge the men, because a lot of the men were probably shaking their head and they're watching this, say, yeah, that's right, the women got the attitude and all of this, but every failure of family and marriage as a whole, okay, I didn't say every specific instance, but as a whole, is a failure of the man. The Black man is the failure when it comes to the breakdown of marriage and family as a whole, because
can I quote you on that? What did you say? Say it again.
I said every breakdown of the family and the marriage as a whole is a failure of the Black man. Okay, not every specific instant. Right. Okay, but when we look at the state as a whole of Black marriage and Black family, that is a failure of the Black man, and it's because the women aren't yearning to take over and lead. They're relegated to that role out of necessity, because they saw a man abuse a woman. They had an absent father, and so they were told by a mom, as a Black woman, as a defense mechanism, she's going to love her daughter. She doesn't want her to go through the same thing. Make sure you got your own, girl. Make sure you don't ever rely on no man. So why was that? Because a Black man was absent. He wasn't there, or he was present, he was abusive, or whatever the case was. And so, this idea that I need a woman to bring something to the table, what happened to you taking the ownership and wanting to provide? And also, when it comes to femininity, not only are women devaluing femininity, but men are devaluing it. Let me say that again. Men are devaluing femininity. Okay, because if men would held in high regard and high esteem, the demanding role of a woman being a wife and being a mom, and held that in high regard and edified that, and I'd give my wife so much appreciation for that. If we had done that, they wouldn't have been so quick to get away from that and move away from it with liberation, the feminist movement, and then liberated from those menial tasks and go enjoy the more exciting world of corporate America. And so when we hold it in high esteem and high regard, and not saying, well, what you done? You just been home all day. Are you kidding? If she's been home all day with children, or you have no idea, right? So, if we start appreciating that more, then, that they're going to live up to that. They're going to esteem and aspire to go after that. And then you guys can start working on that business together.
Absolutely. One of the things that you said, Yolanda, is that there's this resistance of women to depend. There's the word depend on somebody. And one of the things that I've come to realize, actually not for a very long time, I've come to realize that, do you know that part of the reason why a woman might be scared to depend on a man, and we're talking about a husband, also comes back to not actually having a father. And not in the way that everybody's thinking about it, but in the sense that, imagine if we started building our family so solidly and our wealth so solidly that when your daughter leaves your house, okay, she has an apartment that's completely paid off. She has a car that's completely paid off, all these other things. She may not take advantage of it, but they're there. So if she goes out and gets a husband and he fails or doesn't do what he's supposed to do, she still has something to fall back on. Now, some people just don't even have anything to fall back on. So it's like a huge risk to even go forward and depend on anybody. You gotta, like you said, I have to get my own after this, and that, but it's not necessary. And this is one of the things that I've started to appreciate about my home culture, Botswana, because they set this up. It's structured that way, that when a young woman leaves her father's house, she has a full understanding that she's going to be taken care of where she's going. But also, if anything, and it doesn't have to be a horrible thing like him being a horrible husband or beating her or anything like that. It could just be he dies, or he gets ill, So if she's completely dependent on him and he dies or becomes ill, then she becomes destitute. But not if you, for generations, have always fortified your wealth and made sure that everybody's taken care of. You see, this is the problem with starting over every generation. You never ever set up these structures. And if you get divorced and then your kids divorce and you just keep playing this thing over and over, there's no way that you can build a legacy.
It's gonna mess your business up.
Right.
There's no way. Even trying to build a business and your marriage is falling apart and all these other things flying in the air, it's just impossible. Or maybe it's not impossible, but gosh, it's
next to impossible.
Next two. And what I hear you saying is, as a female going out into that situation, you're looking for security.
Right.
That is what you're looking for. Women, we want that security. That is ingrained in us. And to be able to have that money, have that security, I know for us, what we would look to if something like that was to happen is, okay, we'll come back home to the family business. Let's reestablish so that if something does happen that dissolves the marriage or whatever the case may be, abuse, whatever, hopefully we've taught her in the home to where when she picks that mate and they communicate together.
And she won't be picking them on her own.
Right, she won't pick them on. But when that happens, he has that character, he has those leadership qualities, he has that what he's looking for. But if somehow he bumps his head and does something stupid, then James is gonna bump his head. But after that, we're gonna have the money to bring her. We'll have the resources for her to come back and say, I still have that security. I don't feel like I'm out here doing that alone. And that comes from creating that legacy.
Right. And it does. And it really needs to happen over an extended period of time, far beyond what we can see.
Right.
But, again, this is not happening for a lot of people. So they don't even understand the importance of it or understand how it's lacking. And that's why it's important for us to have these conversations so we can make it plain, a little more plain, and make it, tangible, or make us recognize that even in the moment where you're having a disagreement with your spouse, what's at stake,
Right.
So you don't slam the door and storm out. You understand what you're affecting hundreds of years from now. It's not just about today, anger or whatever it is that's going on. And if we make those things real, we'll have people who become much more skilled, not just in the workplace, which is good, but skilled at building families, building homes, building legacy, building wealth, building communities, and so on and so on. And this is so important. And I can't think of anything I would rather do than that. There's nothing that I would rather do than that.
Right.
Yeah, and this is why I'm so committed. And you guys have been great. I still have some more questions in the back of my mind, but it's been about an hour, and I know we all have to get back to our day. So I'll give you a chance to just kind of, give us a few closing thoughts, if you will, so we can wrap up.
Okay, great. Well, first off, thanks again for having us on. We look forward to more conversations. Again, we want to try to bribe you to come on to our platform as well. But want to just wrap with a few maybe little nuggets and practical steps for business. We've talked about the importance of the economics and the family, going together in business. We started off saying, hey, have that strong why, because that's what's going to, push you forward, and then continue to develop. And also, I'll say this as a third point is make sure that you understand in the beginning, you're probably going to have to invest your time capital if you don't have the financial capital. And so, one of the things that's helped propel us in business is, I took the time and I developed skill sets. I didn't have to hire somebody for our website or for our graphics or for our flyers, because that information is out there. That's, I went to school for some of that, but even beyond what I went to school for, I've continued my education, some free, some paid, through learning those things on my own. So we could have, saved that money and invest in our business with our time capital versus actual financial capital. So those would be, some final parts and points that I would say to the audience on that in terms of entrepreneurship. And in terms of, things that we have going on with Marriage by Design, we have some events coming up. We have a course again we released and a book being released at the second half of the year.
And
so
just to be clear, themarriagebydesign.com is where I can
correct. And you can check us out on Facebook. Just search Marriage by Design, and you'll find us on Facebook. Facebook.com/themarriagebydesign.
And you have a live web show. Is it once a week?
Every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Live, take the questions live, all of that. We engage and interact. It's a lot of fun.
I can imagine, yes, and very interesting. I think I'm gonna jump on the next one so I can ask my questions.
Yeah.
So it's been great, guys. I really appreciate talking to you. Thank you, Yolanda. Thank you, James. I want to remind everybody to find out more about James and Yolanda, go to themarriagebydesign.com website, and you can also find them on Facebook. Just search for Marriage by Design. You can find me at themochamoguls.com.